Harrison Bennett pushed through the heavy oak doors of his estate as the storm unleashed its fury across the coastline. Rain hammered against the stone walls with such force that the entire structure seemed to tremble beneath the weight of nature's anger. He stepped inside and heard the door slam shut behind him. The sound swallowed by darkness so complete it felt like stepping into a void. The power was gone. Every light in the mansion had died, leaving only the faint blue emergency strips glowing along the floor like a path through the underworld. Harrison stood still for a moment, water dripping from his coat onto the marble floor as he listened to the house breathe around him. Then he heard something that did not belong. Footsteps, light and uneven, moving somewhere deeper in the mansion. His security system had never failed in 12 years. Tonight, it had gone completely silent. That alone told him something was very wrong. The woman in the shadows, Harrison, moved through the darkened hallways with careful steps, guided only by the dim strips beneath his feet. The storm continued its assault outside, but inside the house, a different kind of tension filled the air. He could feel it pressing against his chest like a warning. When he reached the kitchen, he paused at the door and listened. A soft sound came from inside. Not quite a cry, but close. The kind of sound someone makes when they have no strength left to scream. He pushed the door open, just as lightning split the sky outside. For one brief moment, the entire room lit up in brilliant white light. He saw her. A woman crouched on the floor near the counter, soaking wet and shivering violently. Her dark hair hung in tangled strands around her face, and she clutched a thin, torn blanket against her body. When the lightning faded and darkness returned, she disappeared into the shadows again. Harrison reached for the emergency panel on the wall and activated a low light above the counter. The glow was soft, just enough to see without flooding the room with brightness. The woman flinched when the light touched her face. Her eyes went wide with terror, and she tried to press herself farther into the corner. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Do not turn on more lights. He might see." Bruises and fear. Harrison took a step closer, but stopped when he saw her trembling increase. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, but it was soaked through and torn in several places. As she moved, he caught sight of dark purple bruises covering her arms and shoulders. The marks were clear and unmistakable. Someone had hurt her badly. "Who are you running from?" Harrison asked, keeping his voice quiet and steady. Before she could answer, bright headlights flashed through the kitchen window. A vehicle had pulled up outside the gate. The woman gasped and tried to scramble backward, but her legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed against the cabinet, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "He found me," she breathed. "He followed me here." Heavy fists pounded against the front door. 3 loud blows that echoed through the mansion like gunshots. A man's voice shouted through the storm. "Olivia, come out right now." The woman pressed her hand against her mouth, trying to muffle the sob that escaped. Harrison watched her carefully. Her fear was real and deep. This was not an act or a game. Someone had broken this woman down until she believed running through a storm was safer than staying anywhere visible. "Olivia," Harrison said quietly. "Is that your name?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "If he gets inside, he will hurt you too. He does not care who stands in his way." Promise made in darkness. Harrison removed his coat and knelt down, so he was at her level. The pounding on the door continued, growing more violent with each strike. "I am going to help you," he said. "But first, I need to get you somewhere warmer." "You are freezing." Olivia shook her head quickly. "I cannot move. My legs will not work." Harrison studied her for a moment, then made a decision. "I am going to pick you up now. Do not be afraid." She started to protest, but he was already sliding one arm beneath her knees and another around her back. The blanket stayed between them as he lifted her from the cold floor. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, and he could feel how violently she was shaking. As he stood, his hand brushed against her lower back, and he felt something that made his jaw clench tight. A massive bruise stretched up her spine. She sucked in a sharp breath of pain, and Harrison felt something dark and protective rise in his chest. Olivia's arms wrapped weakly around his neck as thunder crashed overhead. The pounding at the front door grew even louder, more desperate. "Please," she whispered against his shoulder. "Do not let him take me back." Harrison adjusted his hold on her, making sure the blanket covered her completely. "No one is taking you anywhere," he said quietly. "Not tonight. Not ever." Voices at the gate, he carried her through the dark hallways, moving deeper into the mansion where the walls were thicker and the windows fewer. Behind them, the pounding continued, but Harrison ignored it completely. His focus remained on the woman trembling in his arms. When they reached the West Wing, he kicked open the door to the guest suite and carried Olivia inside. He lowered her gently onto the sofa near the fireplace. She curled into herself immediately, pulling the blanket tight around her body. "Stay here," Harrison said. "I need to check the security system." Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Do not leave me alone, please." Harrison paused. He was not accustomed to anyone depending on him this way. It stirred something in his chest he thought had died years ago. "I will stay in this room," he promised. "I just need to see who is outside." Olivia's grip loosened slightly, but fear still filled her eyes. Harrison walked to the wall panel and activated the emergency camera feed. The grainy image showed a black vehicle idling near the gate. A man stood beside it, looking directly up at the camera with a cold smile. Harrison recognized the type instantly. Someone who believed money and power meant he could take whatever he wanted. Someone who had never been told no. He turned back to Olivia. "Tell me everything," he said. "Who is that man, and what did he do to you?" Olivia looked up at him with exhausted eyes. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "His name is Vincent Gallagher, and he has been trying to destroy my life for 2 years." Olivia sat wrapped in the blanket on the sofa, her fingers twisted in the fabric as if holding on for dear life. Harrison stood near the window, his silhouette dark against the faint glow of the emergency lights. The storm continued outside, but inside the room, a different kind of tension filled the space between them. He did not push her to speak. He simply waited, giving her the time she needed to find her voice again. After what felt like an eternity, Olivia lifted her eyes and looked at him directly. "I need you to understand something before I tell you everything," she said quietly. "Vincent Gallagher is not just wealthy, he is untouchable. His family has connections that reach into every corner of power in this city. Police, judges, doctors, politicians, they all answer to him in one way or another." Harrison turned from the window and sat down in the chair across from her. "Tell me how you met him." Olivia took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, I was working as a teacher at a community center in the downtown district. We ran programs for children whose families could not afford proper education. Vincent showed up one day with cameras and reporters, claiming he wanted to donate money to support our mission. The mask of charity. She paused, her eyes distant as the memories pulled her back. At first, everyone thought he was wonderful. He brought supplies, funded scholarships, posed for photographs with the children. The media called him a humanitarian. But I noticed things that did not feel right. Harrison leaned forward slightly. "What things?" "He watched me," Olivia said. "Not in passing, but constantly. He memorized my schedule. He knew where I went for lunch, what time I left work, which route I took home. When I realized he was following me, I tried to be polite but distant. I thought if I just remained professional, he would lose interest." Her voice dropped lower. I was wrong. He did not lose interest. He became obsessed. Harrison's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "Vincent started sending gifts to my apartment. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, things I never asked for and did not want. When I returned them, he acted hurt. He said I was being ungrateful, that he was only trying to show me how much better my life could be with him." The first crack. Olivia pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "One night, he came to my apartment without warning. He had a key. I still do not know how he got it, but he walked in like he owned the place. He told me we were meant to be together, that his family approved of me, that he could give me everything I ever dreamed of." "What did you do?" Harrison asked. "I told him no," Olivia said, her voice trembling. "I told him I was not interested in him that way, that I appreciated his donations to the center, but did not want anything personal with him. That was the first time he hit me." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that could not be put out. Harrison felt his hands curl into fists, but he forced himself to remain still and focused. It was not hard enough to leave a visible mark, Olivia continued. But it was hard enough for me to understand what kind of man he really was, beneath all that charm and generosity. He left that night, but the next day flowers arrived at my door with a note apologizing. He said he lost control because he loved me so much. The evidence she found, Olivia closed her eyes, as if seeing the memory play out behind her eyelids. I tried to get a restraining order, but the lawyer I hired told me it would be difficult without proof. Vincent was careful. He never left bruises where people could see. He never sent threatening messages that could be traced. He was always smiling in public, always kind to everyone around me. Harrison listened carefully, his mind already working through the layers of manipulation and control Vincent had built around her. Then I found something I was not supposed to see, Olivia said. I was at the community center late one night, organizing files in the office. When I came across financial documents that did not make sense, Vincent had donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the money was not going where it was supposed to go. Money laundering, Harrison said quietly. Olivia nodded. I copied everything I could and took it to a journalist I trusted. His name was Thomas Reed, and he had a reputation for exposing corruption. He promised to investigate and protect my identity. He said if the evidence was solid, he would publish the story, and Vincent would finally face consequences. The trap closes. What happened? Harrison asked, though he already suspected the answer. Thomas went silent 3 days later, Olivia said, her voice hollow. He stopped returning my calls. His editor told me Thomas had taken a sudden leave of absence for personal reasons. The story never ran. The evidence disappeared. She looked at Harrison with haunted eyes. 2 weeks after that, Vincent showed up at my apartment again. This time, he was not pretending to be kind. He told me he knew what I had done. He said I had made a terrible mistake trying to destroy him, and now he was going to make sure I never threatened him again. Harrison felt the cold weight of understanding settle over him. That was when he started the psychiatric hold process. Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. He had doctors sign papers claiming I was having mental breakdowns. He had witnesses say I was behaving erratically. He built an entire false narrative that painted me as unstable and dangerous to myself. Then, he had police officers escort me to a private facility. Imprisoned without crime, she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. They locked me in a room with no windows. They gave me medication I did not need. They told me if I cooperated and admitted I was sick, they would let me go home eventually. But I knew the truth. Vincent was going to keep me there until I broke completely, until no one would ever believe anything I said. Harrison stood and walked to the small table near the wall. He poured water into a glass and brought it to her. She took it with shaking hands and drank slowly. How did you escape? He asked. A nurse named Grace, Olivia said. She had been working there for years. She told me she had seen too many women brought in by powerful men who wanted to silence them. She said the facility was not a hospital. It was a prison for people who knew too much. The long-run Olivia set the glass down and stared at her hands. Grace smuggled me out during a shift change. She gave me her coat and told me to run as fast as I could and never look back. I did exactly that. I ran for hours through streets I did not recognize. I had no phone, no money, no plan. I just knew I had to keep moving. They chased you, Harrison said. Vincent sent men in that black vehicle. They followed me for miles. I ran into the woods because there were no cameras there. No way for them to track me easily. The storm started, and I thought I would die from the cold before they caught me. Then I saw your house through the trees. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with exhaustion and desperation. I did not know who you were. I did not know if you would help me or turn me away. I just knew I had nowhere else to go. A shared wound. Harrison sat down beside her, close but not touching. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The storm outside had softened to a steady rain, but the tension inside the room remained thick and heavy. You asked me earlier why I am helping you, Harrison said quietly. The truth is, I know what it feels like to lose someone because I did not act fast enough. Olivia turned to look at him, her expression shifting from fear to curiosity. Her name was Catherine, Harrison continued. She was my younger sister. 10 years ago, she was in a relationship with someone who seemed perfect on the surface. Successful, charming, respected. But behind closed doors, he was destroying her piece by piece. His voice grew quieter. She told me she was fine every time I asked. She hid the bruises. She made excuses for his behavior. And I believed her because I did not want to see the truth. I thought if she needed help, she would ask for it. The weight of regret Olivia's breath caught as she listened. One night she called me, Harrison said. She was crying and said she needed to leave him, that she was scared. I told her to come stay with me, that I would help her. But she never showed up. The next morning, I got a call from the hospital. Catherine had been in an accident. Her car went off a bridge. He paused, his jaw tight. The police ruled it an accident. But I knew the truth. He had driven her to that point, and I had failed to save her because I waited too long to act. Olivia reached out slowly and placed her hand on his arm. The touch was light, tentative, but it carried weight. You did not fail her, she whispered. She knew you loved her. Sometimes love is not enough to save someone from the darkness they are trapped in. Harrison looked at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. That is why I will not let Vincent take you. Because I have lived with the regret of doing nothing once before, I will not live with it again. Olivia's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they were different. Not tears of fear, but of something deeper. Relief. Hope. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was not alone anymore. Why do you trust me? She asked. You do not even know if I am telling the truth? Harrison held her gaze. I trust you because I see the same look in your eyes that I saw in Catherine's the last time we spoke. Fear mixed with determination. The look of someone who refuses to give up even when the world has given them every reason to. Olivia's breath shook as she whispered, What if he gets inside? What if he takes me back? Harrison stood and walked to the window. Outside, the black vehicle still sat near the gate. The rain continued to fall, but the storm was beginning to pass. Then he will have to go through me first, Harrison said. And I promise you, Olivia, that is not something Vincent Gallagher is prepared for. Olivia pulled the blanket closer and felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like maybe survival was not just about running anymore. Maybe it was about standing still long enough to let someone else fight beside her. Thunder rumbled in the distance as the storm began its slow retreat. But inside the mansion, something new was beginning to take shape. Something fragile and powerful at the same time. Trust, protection, and the first stirrings of something neither of them had expected to feel again. Morning. Light began to filter through the heavy curtains of the guest suite, casting soft gray shadows across the room. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind only the sound of water dripping from the eaves and the distant call of birds returning to the trees. But inside the mansion, the tension had not lifted. If anything, it had grown heavier. Olivia had fallen asleep on the sofa sometime before dawn, exhausted beyond measure. Harrison had stayed awake in the chair across from her, watching the security feeds and monitoring every movement outside the gates. The black vehicle had remained parked there all night. It's a silent threat that refused to leave. Now, as pale sunlight touched her face, Olivia stirred and opened her eyes. For a brief moment, confusion clouded her expression. Then memory returned, and with it, the fear. She sat up quickly, clutching the blanket around herself. He is still out there, she whispered, not as a question, but as a statement of terrible certainty. Harrison nodded. He has not moved since last night, but neither have I. Olivia looked at him properly for the first time in the daylight. His suit was wrinkled from sitting in the chair all night. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence that he had not slept even for a moment. Yet his gaze remained sharp and focused, like a guard who would not abandon his post. You stayed awake all night watching over me, she said softly. Someone had to. Harrison replied simply, the knock that changed everything before Olivia could respond. 3 sharp knocks echoed through the mansion, not from the front door this time, but from the side entrance, near the garden. Both of them froze. Harrison stood immediately and moved toward the hallway. "Stay here. Do not come out unless I call for you." Olivia's hand shot out and grabbed his sleeve. "What if it is Vincent?" "Then I will handle it," Harrison said firmly. "But you need to trust me." Wait. She released his sleeve slowly, her fingers trembling. Harrison walked through the quiet hallways until he reached the side entrance. Through the frosted glass, he could see two figures standing outside. He opened the door just wide enough to see who they were. Two police officers stood on the steps, their uniforms crisp despite the dampness left by the storm. The older officer spoke first, his voice polite but carrying an edge of authority. "Good morning, sir. We received a report that a missing person may have entered your property last night. A young woman named Olivia Hartwell. She is considered at risk and in need of immediate medical evaluation." Harrison studied them carefully. Their badges looked legitimate, but he had learned long ago that legitimacy could be bought when enough money changed hands. "I am not aware of anyone entering my property," Harrison said evenly. "My security system was down during the storm." The younger officer shifted his weight. "Sir, we have reason to believe she may be hiding here. We need to conduct a search for her own safety." "Do you have a warrant?" Harrison asked. The older officer's expression hardened slightly. "This is a wellness check, sir. We do not need a warrant for that." Standing firm, Harrison's voice remained calm, but took on a tone of steel. "You absolutely do need a warrant to enter my private residence without my consent. I am aware of my rights, and I suggest you become familiar with them as well before making claims that could result in a lawsuit against your department." The officers exchanged glances. The older one tried a different approach, his voice softening into something meant to sound reasonable. "Sir, this woman is not well. She has a history of mental instability. Her family is very worried about her. We are just trying to help, and I suggest you help by doing your job properly," Harrison said, "which includes respecting the law and obtaining proper documentation before attempting to violate." The younger officer's jaw tightened. "You are protecting her, are you not?" Harrison met his gaze without flinching. "I am protecting my property from unlawful entry. There is a significant difference. Now, unless you have a warrant, I suggest you leave my property immediately." The older officer took a step back, clearly frustrated. "We will be back with the proper paperwork, and when we return, you will not be able to stop us." "I look forward to reviewing that paperwork very carefully," Harrison replied. "Good day, officers." He closed the door firmly and locked it. Through the frosted glass, he watched them walk back toward their vehicle. But they did not leave. They joined the black vehicle near the gate. And Harrison saw them speaking with someone inside. Vincent had brought reinforcements. The plan. Take shape. Harrison returned to the guest suite where Olivia sat on the edge of the sofa, her face pale with worry. The moment she saw him, she stood up. "What happened?" she asked urgently. "Police officers claiming they need to conduct a wellness check," Harrison said. "I sent them away without a warrant, but they will return. Vincent is using every resource he has to get to you." Olivia pressed her hands to her face. "I told you. He has people everywhere. You cannot fight him, Harrison. He will destroy you too." Harrison walked over to her and gently pulled her hands away from her face, so she had to look at him. "Olivia, listen to me carefully. Vincent Gallagher may have money and connections, but he has made one critical mistake." "What mistake?" she whispered. "He assumed everyone could be bought or intimidated," Harrison said. "But he does not know who I am or what resources I have at my disposal. And he certainly does not know how far I am willing to go to protect someone who deserves protection." Olivia's eyes searched his face. "Who are you, Harrison?" He hesitated for just a moment before answering. "I built my fortune in technology and security systems. I have access to information that most people cannot even imagine exists. And I have spent years learning how to use that information to expose corruption when I find it." Understanding dawned slowly in Olivia's expression. "You can fight him." "I can," Harrison confirmed. "But I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Olivia nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, I trust you." The evidence resurfaced. Harrison moved to the desk in the corner of the room and opened his laptop. Within minutes, he had accessed secure networks and databases that required layers of encryption to penetrate. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as Olivia watched from behind him. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Finding the evidence you gave to that journalist," Harrison said. "Thomas Reed. If Vincent made it disappear, he did not destroy it. He just buried it, and I am very good at digging." For 20 minutes, Olivia watched as Harrison navigated through systems she did not understand. Finally, he stopped and leaned back in his chair, his expression grim but satisfied. "Found it," he said. "All the financial documents you copied?" Thomas uploaded them to a secure server before he was silenced. Vincent's people never found them because they did not know where to look. Olivia's breath caught. "Can you use them?" "I can do more than that," Harrison said. "I can send them to every legitimate news organization in the country, simultaneously. Once this information goes public, Vincent will not be able to bury it again." Hope flickered in Olivia's eyes, but fear still gripped her. "He will come after both of us." "Let him try," Harrison said quietly. "By the time he realizes what is happening, it will be too late." The breaking point, another knock, came at the front door. Harder this time. More insistent. Harrison checked the security feed and saw not just police officers now, but Vincent himself standing at the gate, flanked by 2 private security guards. Vincent's voice carried through the intercom system. "Harrison Bennett, I know you were in there, and I know you have something that belongs to me. Send Olivia out, and we can resolve this matter quietly." Harrison activated the intercom. "Olivia Hartwell is not your property, Mr. Gallagher, and she is not leaving." Vincent's laugh came through the speakers, cold and confident. "You do not understand the situation you have put yourself in. I have connections that reach farther than you can imagine. I can make your life very difficult." "Then we have something in common," Harrison replied, "because I can make your life impossible." There was a pause. Then Vincent's voice came back, harder now, stripped of false politeness. "You have 1 hour to send her out. After that, I will have no choice but to involve authorities at a level you cannot fight." Harrison ended the transmission and turned to Olivia. She stood frozen, her entire body shaking. "He will never stop," she whispered. "He will keep coming until he wins." Harrison walked over to her and placed his hands gently on her shoulders. "Olivia, look at me." She lifted her eyes to his, and he saw the exhaustion and terror that had lived in her for so long. "I am going to ask you something very important," Harrison said, "and I need you to answer honestly. Do you want to keep running, or do you want to stand and fight?" The whisper that changed everything, Olivia's breath trembled as she considered the question. For 2 years, she had done nothing but run. She had hidden and survived and convinced herself that survival was enough. But standing here now, in front of this man who had shown her more protection and kindness in one night than anyone had in years, she realized something profound. She was tired of running. "I want to fight," she whispered. "But I am so afraid." Harrison's expression softened in a way she had not seen before. "Fear does not mean you are weak. It means you understand the danger. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "I do not know if I am strong enough." "You are," Harrison said firmly. "You survived 2 years of hell. You escaped a locked facility. You ran through a storm rather than surrender. You are stronger than you realize." Olivia looked up at him and something broke open inside her chest. All the walls she had built to protect herself, all the defenses she had maintained just to keep breathing, crumbled in that moment. She took one small step forward and rested her forehead against his chest. "Thank you," she whispered so softly he almost did not hear it. "Thank you for seeing me." The moment he let himself feel, Harrison stood very still as Olivia leaned against him. He had not allowed himself to feel this kind of protective emotion since Catherine died. He had convinced himself that caring too deeply only led to pain and loss. But this woman in his arms had awakened something he thought had died with his sister. The desire to fight for someone who could not fight alone. Slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around Olivia and held her as she cried. Not the desperate sobs of fear she had released the night before, but quieter tears. The kind that come when someone finally feels safe enough to let their guard down completely. "I will not let him hurt you again," Harrison said quietly into her hair. "I promise you that." Olivia pulled back just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were red from crying, but something new had appeared in them. "Hope. What do we do now?" she asked. Harrison gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "Now we show Vincent Gallagher what happens when he underestimates the wrong people." Stan Harrison sent the files to multiple news organizations with encryption that made them impossible to trace or stop. Within an hour, the story began breaking across major networks. Financial fraud, corruption, abuse of power. Vincent Gallagher's carefully constructed image shattered in real time. Outside the mansion, chaos erupted. Police vehicles arrived, but this time they were not there for Olivia. They were there for Vincent. Legitimate officers with legitimate warrants based on the evidence that had just gone public. Harrison and Olivia watched from the window as Vincent was led away in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. The black vehicle that had haunted her for days drove away empty. Olivia's knees buckled with relief. "Ah!" And Harrison caught her before she fell. He lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest as she wrapped her arms around his neck, and finally allowed herself to believe it was over. "You are safe now," Harrison whispered, his voice thick with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "You are safe." Olivia looked up at him with tears streaming down her face, but for the first time they were tears of relief and gratitude. "You saved me." Harrison held her closer, feeling the weight of his own past finally begin to lift. "No," he said softly. "You saved yourself. I just made sure you did not have to do it alone." And in that moment, as morning light filled the room and the nightmare finally ended, something new began between them. Something built on trust and protection and the understanding that sometimes the strongest love grows from the darkest storms. The end.